Good evening, everyone. My name is Flavia Teixeira. Today is the 9th of August 2022, and we're going to start another class. What is Spiritism? So last week we had, just sharing our screen. Just a little glitch. So start to sharing our screen. And so today we're going to keep studying the chapter 3. So this is on the, so last class with Fran, it's still on the same subject, but it's just finishing off. So chapter 3, the solution of a few problems by the means of the Spiritist doctrine and human beings during their life on Earth. So today we're going to study from page 203 to 206. So Kardec, okay, so it's very, actually not too long, but keep, all the questions and questionings that Kardec and people around have about, the life on Earth for us. So in what, we already discussed on this is plurality of the worlds, yeah, so it means that there are many worlds and many different beings, not necessarily with the human form, but with different forms. So ask Kardec create this question saying, would it be possible, according to some people's way of thinking, that the soul incarnates only once, but then goes on accomplish further progress in the spirit state or in other realms? And then Kardec's answer saying, well, this proposition would be acceptable if on the Earth there were only people of the same moral and intellectual level. Some say that the Earth is meant for only one specific level. It would be incomprehensible that primitives could not become civilized on Earth, since there are many advanced souls incarnated on the same globe. So that means that, and we know, like through, some of the talks we already had and previous, like during the entire studies of this book, that in any planet, I suppose, Earth at the moment is in a moment of trial and expiations. So before then, we were in a primitive world. So we already regenerated to trial and expiation, and now we are in a transition to become a world of regeneration. But we know that, like during when Earth was a primitive world, there were migrations of souls. Yeah, so like while we're still as a primitive world, there were some spirits migrate from different constellations because their constellation, their planet was in transition, and so their moral evolution didn't. It wasn't compatible to the transition they were going through. So they were like expat, they became expats or ascended exile to worlds that they would, they had intellectual knowledge, but their moral was not evolved enough. And we know that many of those spirits at that time actually came to Earth. And that's how we are able to explain some of the civilizations that existed, that had, technologies that until these days science cannot explain. Like the Mayas, the Inca, Atlantis, that we don't have much information, but through Spiritism, we know it did exist. And so these spirits, they came to Earth in a time when Earth was primitive, so most of the souls were very simple and ignorant. And they brought, with their intelligence, they actually brought evolution to and progress. So that's how normally it happens, yeah. So spirits, they incarnate to actually to bring progress, come more intellectually evolved. So in that concept, so if all the spirits are the same and have the same level of evolution, then I suppose the progress is not as good. Yeah, I think the beauty of having different levels of evolution is that the ones that are not as evolved can learn with the ones that are more evolved, and that in that sense that. And Kardec puts very, in this ways, like, so if you, okay, so if you born, if everyone is in the same stage, if you're born primitive, you will not be able to leave that situation. And Kardec continues saying, well, from these must conclude that the possibility for the plurality of earthly existence results from the diversity of spirit incarnated on earth. And that's true, like that diversity actually brings and pushes forward progress, I suppose. And then, so first, yeah, if you think on that way, how would you explain, yeah, would the Earth be like in a monopoly of incarnations? And second, in such a monopoly where the fact that there are souls incarnated in every level of advancement. And that's at the moment, like when we look at Earth in many countries, I suppose, and we sometimes reflect, there are so many countries, when we look at the way their society works, it feels like they're still living on 1600s or even less, like the way that the dynamics of their society is. And so that explains that a lot, I suppose. And then Kardec puts questions also, yeah? So in the midst of civilized societies, why are there individuals of level of ferociousness similar to the most barbaric primitives? And so he writes here, so they are little evolved spirits who have left their former barbaric cultures to reincarnate in an environment unfamiliar to them, in which they feel out of place, just as a Boer would feel if suddenly brought into an environment of high society. And then makes a comment, would be hard to believe, without denying God's justice and goodness, that the soul of a hardened criminal could have the same point of departure in this life as an individual full of every virtue. If the soul were not previous to the body, the soul of a criminal would be as new as the soul of a moral individual, So why then would be good and the other evil? And I think on these questions also, I think it reminds me in a sense of when he says here, we know, I watch a seminar, and it's the first time I actually heard about planetary transitioning. And someone asked a question, what is the explanation for so much violence that we see around the world? And then the speaker, which is Sérgio Thyssen, he's a doctor in Brazil, he's a medium doctor, and he said, what's happening is in the transition is the fact that there is many spirits that they haven't had the chance to incarnate in centuries. Yeah, so like a very, fierce army, generals and, people that slaughters and, many of those people haven't had a condition to incarnate. And now this condition is being given to them as a last resource. So these spirits, they have a chance of reincarnated to try to do good. And if they don't achieve a certain level, they were actually going to be exiled to a different constellation and different planet. So these spirits, according to most of the spirit stalkers and mediums, they say since the year 2000, these spirits that they don't have a condition to stay on this world of regeneration, they were actually going to be exiled. They're already being transferred to other planets. And also, they are saying also that for all the spirits that will disincarnated since, I think it was since the 1980s, they won't be born into the world of trial expiation. So all the spirits that have been, I'd say, disincarnated in the last 30, 40 years, the next time they're born on Earth, it will be already a world of regeneration. So Kardec asks here, so where do the distinctive characteristics of the various cultures come from? And then he responds, from spirits who share more or less the same tastes and inclinations, and who incarnate in a sympathetic environment, and they're often the same environment where they can satisfy such inclinations. And this is the concept of society, so how the societies are created. So society is a group of people that have the same values, the same aims, and they gather together for that, because they have the same interests. So if we even study sociology or social science, it's one of the principles of the society. And then we go to question 143, and he asks, how do cultures progress and decay? So if the soul were created at the same time as the body, the humans of today would be as new and as primitive as the human of the Middle Ages. By then, are their habits more benign and their minds more developed? And if their death of the body and the souls leaves the earth for good, we must ask further, what would be the results of the work done to improve a culture if it had to be recommenced with the new souls arriving each and every day? And I think we probably can relate to that, to history. So many cultures existed and actually extinguished. When we come to in many of the books that talks about Atlantis is saying that they were very evolved, intelligent beings, but then the intelligence their high intelligence actually starts to walk on the way of doing the bad things, and to go to do evil, into a point they actually destroyed the whole society. So we have to really be careful, because in Spiritism is we believe it's a lot easier to evolve intellectually than actually evolve morally. And that's the hard work. It's actually to evolve morally. If we think that Jesus came to earth about 2022 years ago, and we still struggle with his teachings. Yeah, why we still, killing each other? Why are we, still hating each other, why we still acquiring bad, like instead of sharing our wealth, we just keeping to ourselves. That's not what Christ came to tell us or teach us, but we still not able to do it. We still struggle to not get offended if someone says some things that we don't like it. So from there we take, because, and I suppose in answering that too, is like the cultures, the group and society are created by people, and people have the power to choose. I can wake up every day and choose to do good, or choose maybe to not do anything, or reply in aggressively way when someone does something to me. I have that choice, and what we call free will. And I suppose, society doesn't evolve because it's a mix of people and everyone reacts differently. So everyone is in a different process of evolution. In the same, we can say that, and he questioning, so if it's always new souls arriving, we know the new souls are actually primitive and ignorant. So if they always arrived and not giving them this chance to evolve, that society itself is not going to evolve, because we're always going to be on the same pace. So spirits incarnate into a sympathetic environment, and according to the level of their advancements. For example, a person in one culture who has progressed sufficiently, but who did not find in that culture an environment corresponding to that level he or she has reached, will incarnate in a more advanced culture. So sometimes we are put in those cultures or different groups that we sometimes don't get on. So we actually learn how to accept and learn. And with that, I suppose will bring us some involvement. Yeah. So as a generation moving and stepping forward through sympathy, it attracts new arrivals of more advanced spirits who perhaps might have previously lived in the same country and progressed. It is thus that step by step a nation advances. If the majority of the new arrivals were of a less evolved nature, and if the former inhabitants departing every day did not then return to a worse environment, the culture would decay and end up dying. And that's a very interesting point, yeah, because we need the tendency of the spirits is to evolve. But then if they keep like always doing the same things, we have that also in culture, yeah? So people have traditions, so societies and cultures that are very traditional, and they don't budge into, create or changing, they eventually die. There's so many religions and groups of that actually cease to exist because of that. And then just a comment that Kardec makes is saying, such questions give rises to others which find their solution in the same principle, for example. And then he questions, where does the diversity of cultures on earth come from? Where the cultures that rebel against progress, is that black race capable of attaining a level of the European? Is this slavery useful to the progress of the level evolved cultures, and how can the transforming kind take place? We have to understand that Kardec was born in the 1800s, and so slavery still existed. Some of the colonies have, in some places, had then already abolished slavery, but slavery is still under the radar, even though it's illegal. There's some slavery is still practiced. And if we think, like, if we come back to that, right, slavery still exists. We go to some countries. I am from Brazil, and we know that there are actually industrial people, you know, like business people, making people to live in slavery conditions. And how do you consider what is, you know, the conditions? So they employ the person, and most of the time they will be somewhere isolated, and then so they give them a salary, but then they charge accommodation, food, and, you know, electricity, gas, and by the time these people pay back all this stuff, they have no money. So they live in that situation, and most of the time they end up being in debt with the employer. And so he actually, this is a slavery, and it's being, like, you know, reported, like a few companies and well-known worldwide companies actually use of slavery, enslaved service to make their products. You know, there's a big trend or around the world, so people find out, you know, the companies and products they are buying to make sure it doesn't come from an exploitation of other people. Yeah, and so we can see in history pretty clear, you know, like the rise and the fall of so many empires. You know, like if I take it from Brazil, like Portugal, when Brazil was discovered in 1500s, was, you know, it was expanding, it was conquer the world, and then in the 1800s, it has, with all the wars around Europe and this and that, it lost its, you know, status and lost everything. So many countries. So, and I suppose that when you're talking about spirituality, it works in the same way. So if the culture, it doesn't work for the good of the whole society, it tends to slowly extinguish itself. So we're actually finishing this topic, and the resources, we can find this book, What is the Spiritism, the entire book on the Kardecopedia. So just search kardecopedia.com, and they will, you have access to the whole book. Our next session for this study is from on the 16th August next week, and is from page 209 to page 13. And the topic is going to be human beings after death. That's what the next topic is. So I hope you enjoy our lesson today, and I see you next week. Thanks for watching. Hey everyone, have a safe and nice week. Thank you. Peace be with all of you.